Well, it was a big week for corn planting, with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's latest crop progress showing a jump from 49% to 70% as of May 19th. Also, though, a big week for bad weather in a lot of places that were not us. We had great weather this past week, for planting anyway, so we're really expecting to see the planting progress numbers go way up for the state of Indiana, and particularly way up for those of us right here in this region. So we'll talk about that with Kohli and Cavanaugh, brought to you by Allen County Farm Bureau. You know, the Farm Bureau is looking out for the interests of Hoosier farm families, and they do that every day. It's what they do, from local issues to state issues, all the way to Capitol Hill. Your membership supports that, so please be a member. Go online to itpaystobeamember.org. Well, guys, you know, I think we've talked more about wheat this year and in recent weeks than any other in recent memory. And David, you know, you've talked a lot about the Russian wheat crop. It has the most uncertainty, I guess, behind it right now, and has for several weeks. U.S. wheat crop has had some struggles, certainly in the West, but the Illinois Wheat Association did their one-day tour this past week and estimated Illinois wheat at 104 bushels an acre. Wow. Just for a little perspective here, last year's Illinois wheat made only 87 bushels, and that was a record then. So they busted that record all to pieces.
Yeah, the spring was just perfect for them. So it was a big deal for them, and also for parts of Indiana, too. But the western areas, Kansas in particular, Oklahoma and Texas, some wheat areas were hit by devastating weather. It was horrendous. It was widespread. Friday, Wisconsin got clobbered again. But we're not expecting much rain here. All the rain they were predicting earlier has gone away. There's a chance for rain. And again, I want to say this, a chance almost every day going forward, but it's going to probably split just like it has been, either going north or south.
And John, the wheat here in Indiana looks exceptionally good.
Terrific. Yes, it's got a very high rating. It looks excellent. And this is going to be another really good wheat crop this year for Indiana. Now, what wheat is grown in Indiana is primarily grown in southern Indiana. But I will say that what's out there looks excellent.
Yeah. But John, you've talked about the wheat and corn spread, the spread between wheat and corn and its impact in the marketplace. Talk about that a little bit, because it's pretty fascinating.
Yes, it is fascinating, because I kind of got away from you, because we've had a very, very strong bull market in wheat here for a while, as you just mentioned earlier. And where's that coming from, by the way? It's primarily coming from all the problems in Russia, and the Russia-Ukraine war has been a factor. And that's just causing a lot of concern about exporting wheat out of Russia. Remember, Russia is the largest wheat exporter in the world. So because of all the problems in the Black Sea, there's concern that that's going to disrupt export shipments and therefore effectively cut down world supplies of wheat. And that's driving the price higher. Plus, they lost quite a bit of acres because of extremely cold weather. And now they've got dry weather problems in southern Russia, which is hurting the crop. And that crop has been lowered considerably. And therefore, the price of wheat has gone up. And it's been running recently here about $2.30 a bushel above the price of corn. Now, I'm just looking at futures. I'm not looking at cash corn. I'm just looking at the futures. But remember, feed wheat competes with corn for feed usage. And at $2.30 a bushel premium wheat, it won't work. It works around $1.30.
Yeah.
Okay, at $1.30, a certain amount of wheat is going to go into animal feed. When it exceeds that number, they won't feed nearly as much wheat, and we're now at $2.30. What does that mean? It tells me that in the future, for the balance of this crop year, we may have more corn fed than we realize. There's no wheat to compete with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it'd be bullish corn, right?
It is bullish corn. The market hasn't really talked a whole lot about that, but when you look at the numbers, you say, well, hey, what is it that David says? Pay attention to what they're not talking about.
Yeah. And, you know, what we had yesterday was Mercado said that the safrinha corn crop was down to 83.6 million metric tons, down 3. And the latest talk is if it goes below 80, that corn market's going to come on fire. Plus, also the total production in Brazil is down to 123.3. That's also down 3 million metric tons.
You're pointing out supplies are getting hurt at the moment, and demand seems to be going up. And what else is going well are the corn exports out of the U.S.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, you were talking about China, and a little mysterious. You know, it's like, why are they buying our corn all of a sudden? And I think maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what's driving it.
Right.
That's exactly it. That concerns me a little bit. If China's starting to buy some U.S. corn, this corn export market may get a lot better than we realize. At the moment, corn sales versus a year ago are up 442 million bushels. Now, the government is predicting it for the whole year to increase by about 480 million bushels from last year. We've already got most of that done. So doesn't that tell you there's a good chance that the corn exports will exceed current estimates? I think there's a very high chance of that.
Look what Mexico bought. They bought 436,000 tons of corn in the last week.
Thanks to Mexico.
And China bought another 273 tons of corn. Now, they probably switched some of that, from what the unknown already bought. But the corn exports are really doing well right now. Bean exports are pitiful. And I'll tell you, Brazil's saying if our corn crop, like I said, if it goes below 80 on the safrinha, because that's all exportable corn, then you're going to see their exports cut. Then they'll be coming over here on their knees trying to buy corn.
Yeah. That's right. And you talk about Mexico, and they're the leading buyer of U.S. corn right now. They've exceeded expectations, et cetera. Well, I also just saw a discussion about adverse weather in Mexico is affecting their corn crop. It may be as small as production of 23 to 24 million tons. That's a reduction from last year. Well, if this bad weather continues, that's going to increase their demand for U.S. corn.
Yeah. So switching to soybeans, there was a rumor out there this week, David, that China booked somewhere between 2 and 8 vessels, and I didn't really hear that we got much confirmation about that. What's the word on the streets?
No. Yeah, there was no flash news that came out. They're talking that China was looking to buy beans from us. They apparently have done some private purchases, I'm hearing, of 2 to 3 cargoes, but then we'll have to wait now till next Tuesday, because if they're broken up, they wouldn't report the flash sales because it's below 100,000 tons. So that's probably why. But look at Tuesday to see the export reports and see how we ended up that way.
Yeah.
What's China doing buying beans from the U.S.? That's isn't that a big surprise? Even if they just bought a couple of vessels, and there's rumors of as many as 6 to 8, which may be a little bit too high. But did you expect to see the Chinese, especially coming off the Gulf? And the Gulf basis increased by 5 cents one day last week because of these rumors and stories. What's going on?
Yeah, because it's been coming from Pacific Northwest. It's not coming from the Gulf that much because all sorts of the problems with the Panama Canal. And so that is driving it all toward the Pacific Northwest. And so rail traffic should be picking up at that point. But China has been having weather problems also. They've had monsoonal rains. They've had severe weather, just like we have had. We're not getting in the news. And again, like you said, John, listen to what they're not saying, because the Chinese weather in some cases is worse than ours.
There are things brewing out there that are driving this market, although let's keep in mind another major driving force for the grain markets has been the macros, the metals, the energies, in particular gold and copper, both of which have set new highs. That is causing the funds to come in and cover short positions. The focus is not on ag commodities, it's on those energies and metals. But as they go higher, it does drag the grains and the ag markets along with it.
Yeah, well, we're going to probably, like David was saying, have a look and see what's going on Tuesday after the 3-day weekend. And one of the things that's going to happen is that I think the focus of everybody's probably going to be even more so on the weather, but secondarily on planted acreage as well. David, one of the things, going back to Brazil is that I saw this week that apparently they're expecting some major livestock losses from the record flooding there in Brazil. Do you hear anything about that?
No, I have not. And again, there's not much talk about it right now. They're showing pictures of the floods and the extent of the flooding. When we see floods here, it's mainly the rivers overflowing the banks. But boy, down in Brazil, the rivers won't overflow. They're turning into lakes right now. Yeah. And that's a huge problem. So I would not be surprised to see some cattle losses. Now, this would be mainly in the middle of Brazil, not so much the southern part, because that's where most of the cattle ranches are, in the middle. But I'll tell you, any cattle in the southern part would definitely be affected by those floods, yes.
Going to have an impact on our beef, because Brazil, obviously, on a global scale, affects the beef markets.
Well, we did see some Chinese demand for beef this week. Yes, they were the biggest buyers at 5.8. And Korea bought 5.1, so I'm excited about that. I would love to see the export demand for our beef to pick up again, because we had one of the largest weekly export sales reports of beef, 21.5. It's been going like 7 to 9 to 12. And it's up to almost the pork level, 26.3. Mexico, again, the big buyer of our pork, 10.3. But the point is, it's good to see the beef exports coming back again.
I did not expect pork prices to go down this week, and they did tick down a little bit. I didn't expect that with a Memorial Day weekend. I thought, hey, everybody's going to be buying ribs and put them on the grill.
The problem is that the retailers have to book their beef, their pork, and their eggs way ahead of the holiday, so they've got it in their store. So the week before the holiday, all this market starts falling down because they've already got it booked and priced. That week before holiday is always a seriously sad week for the big food producers.
All right. Well, that time of the program to get the final word, and so we turn our attentions toward Mr. John Cavanaugh. What do you got for us today, John?
Well, something kind of interesting. Now, fortunately, the past couple of weeks, our part of the grain belt has dried out. We had an awful lot of rain. In fact, the month of April was twice normal. In early May, we got an awful lot of rain, too. But finally, it's dried out, and we're making good planting progress. However, the western U.S., which has been pretty dry, has gotten some fairly heavy amounts of rain. They got a lot of stuff planted early, but since then they've had quite a bit of rain. And what's really important, and I guess would have to view this as a little bit on the bare side, but the amount of corn acres that have been affected by drought has dropped to 10%.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
And soybeans down to 7%. So the dry areas, in other words, have been getting some pretty good rainfall and replenishing those dry soils, which puts it in a better position to grow that crop this coming summer.
Thanks, guys. Kohli and Cavanaugh, made possible each week by support from the Allen County Farm Bureau. Your local county farm bureau supports Indiana agriculture every day, from classroom programs for kids to political action that eliminated the state inheritance tax, and even more recently made an all-out effort to make sure most of the $860 million for Indiana broadband went to Hoosier farm families, the ones struggling with low or even no internet service. Support the Farm Bureau with a membership, and you'll get discounts on cars, computers, and even your next vacation. Go online to itpaystobeamember.org.
Podcasts by Federated Media.